The whiff of desperation from Warner Brothers Discovery, David Zaslav, James Gunn and Peter Safran is getting stronger and stronger and stronger. The stench is so strong, I may need to put some cream under my nose. You remember the tweet I read for you the other day from the comic book writer defending James Gunn's DC Vision and begging us to support it? Well, there's another tweet now from actor D.B. Woodside. It's almost copy and pasted. Can you smell that? Can you smell that desperation? D.B. Woodside played Wayne Palmer, President David Palmer's brother in 24. He also played Amanadale, Lucifer's brother, in the Lucifer TV show. Take a listen to this desperation. This might get me a lot of hate tweets from Zack Snyder, who I love, fans, but so already he mentions the Zack Snyder fans. We are in their very nightmares. We are not a minority fan base. We are hurting their bottom line, and they will try anything to dismantle what we've been doing. So take a listen to this bullshit. Every James Gunn movie I've ever seen, I've loved. So how about we give him the creative space to do what he does so well? I trust actors. There's a reason why everyone who works with him loves him, and that love for him shows up on the screen. I, for one, am rooting for his vision of the DC world. Very, very interesting. From D.B. Woodside, as I say, it's nearly a copy and pasting of the comic book writer's begging letter on Twitter the other day. Could it be that David Zaslav, James Gunn and Peter Safran, Warner Brothers Discovery and DC Studios, are sending certain people with influence certain things to say in support of James Gunn? Yes, I think so, everyone. I think this is the ooze, the stench of their desperation. They're in so much trouble, they don't know what to do next. And James Gunn's reputation is in the toilet because he interfered with The Flash. He's been getting involved with these final 4 DC movies, and he's messing with Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom. He's messed with Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom. And James Wan is not happy with James Gunn. As I say, James Wan will expose him when the time is right. He will expose Zaslav, Warner Brothers Discovery, and a lot of them because they've interfered with the man's movie. But let's take a step back and look when and where it all went wrong for these DC movies. Now, I've read lots of Access Media articles trying to defend all these people, trying to say certain things and give certain reasons why this movie has failed. Apparently, it's because they gave us what we wanted. I never asked for Keaton's Batman. I never asked for Sasha Calle to replace Henry Cavill, for Leslie Grace to replace Ben Affleck. I didn't ask for that shit. But let's do a really, really deep dive and let's have a look at how it first went wrong. So Aquaman made $1 billion because it was the last really epic DCEU movie. And if you look at the past box office, DC fans and the general audience love epic comic book movies. So anyway, from Shazam, from the first Shazam to the Flash movie, these DC movies have averaged around 200 million to around nearly 400 million. Now that's a low-grade box office. But let's have a look at it even deeper because it gets even worse. When we look at when this all started, oh yeah, Justice League. So we went from Justice League to Aquaman, which made a lot of money. So apart from one DC movie, since Justice League, these DC movies have averaged around 200 to 400 million. That's been the average. Could it be that the firing of Zack Snyder started this terrible box office? Yes, I think so. So it's not about Ezra Miller. Not really. It's not about anything else. It's not about giving fans what they want. If you work it out and you backstep and you backtrace and you backtrack and you have a look at when this started to go wrong, it was from the moment they released Justice League. Yes, Aquaman made money. But every movie since Shazam, and I'll repeat this, has averaged 200 to nearly 400 million. That's it. That's been their box office. So you can track the downfall in box office to Zack Snyder's exit. Let's look at the beginning of the DCEU. Man of Steel, 650 million. Batman vs. Superman, Dawn of Justice, 850 million. Suicide Squad, nearly 800 million. Wonder Woman, 800 million. Even Justice League made 650, but I'm not saying that was good enough for a Justice League movie. Justice League was a piece of shit, but it was Justice League that started the decline. And the only reason Aquaman made $1 billion because it was a huge, epic, brilliant CBM. After that, they started to make really, really cheap CBMs. Now, Truth31, the YouTuber, keeps on saying he doesn't want the Snyderverse. He wants a new universe. He wants kind of movies like Shazam, Birds of Prey, Wonder Woman 84, and The Flash. That's the type of movies Truth31 wants, because that's the type of movies you're going to get. Non-epic, small, cheap, budgeted movies. A bit like Blue Beetle, which is the next DC movie. People keep on asking me about Blue Beetle. If it's a great movie, people will come to watch it. It's as simple as that. If it's a bad movie that insults fans, it won't be successful. It's as simple as that. The Flash movie insulted DC fandom. Now, let's talk about this so-called real DC fandom, the one that says we should support every DC movie no matter what. No, DC and Marvel are not sporting outfits. They're not football teams. They're not soccer teams. They're not rugby. They're not American football. I don't have to consume every DC movie. I do because I love DC, but I shouldn't have to. I and everyone should only consume good movies. Movies where there's quality, where it's entertaining, and they show love for the DC universe. And if they don't do that, I and you don't have to and shouldn't have to support them. But maybe, and here's a controversial statement, maybe the real DC fans are the Snyder fans, and the pretend fake DC fans are the shills who were telling us all, shaming us all to go and watch The Flash. Shaming us because we're laughing at the Flash movie failing, and we shouldn't take pleasure in DC failing. Maybe the Flash movie failing is the best thing that could have happened to DC films, because it tells them all, we won't take second best. We want top quality DC movies. They called Man of Steel, Batman vs. Superman, Dawn of Justice, and the Snyder Cut pretentious, dark, and grim. No, those films were not pretentious, dark, and grim. They took the material seriously. They didn't go, oh, comic books, they're so beneath us. Zack looked at those characters and those worlds and took a deep dive into them. That is not pretentious. It's only because you wanted cookie cutter MCU movies that mean jack shit that you forget about, but you can say, oh look, Rotten Tomatoes, a site named after a tomato owned by Hollywood Studios. Rotten Tomatoes, owned by Hollywood Studios. IMDb, the same. All these big, media, access media outlets, Variety, THR, They basically bend the knee to the Hollywood overlords. We already know that. So corrupt. How many times did they tell us the Snyder Cut didn't exist? They were playing with the facts. We knew the Snyder Cut wasn't ready. We knew it hadn't been finished, but there was rough cuts. There was multiple director's cuts, and Zack just needed the budget to finish off his movie. We knew he shot his movie in London. We saw him wrap principal photography in London. We knew he shot his movie. We fought for his movie, and we won. Now you listen to me. There's rumors out there that Netflix are going to do a deal for the Snyderverse movies. Now I don't even know if that's possible, but I won't celebrate it till I know it's a fact. They could lease out DC and allow Netflix to make DC movies. That is possible. Sorry, Watsu. What's that terrible YouTuber's name? Is it Watsu? Oh my God, yeah, I really don't like that guy. Anyways, another one who's really, really annoying and trying to take advantage of people who love something. So it is possible for that to happen. I'm not saying it will happen, but if it does happen, it's the biggest fan coup in history since the release of the Snyder Cut. It's something that Snyderverse stans have been fighting for. So there you have it, everyone. The desperate tactics yet again from WB, getting this actor to beg people to support James Gunn's vision. But unfortunately, James Gunn hasn't covered himself in clover, has he now? He's interfered, he's spoken too much, he's been insulting and condescending. But his biggest mistake was the removal of Henry Cavill, or at least his early announcement of removing Henry Cavill. I believe, as you know, that Peter Safran and James Gunn shouldn't have been announced until after these 4 movies were released. But even if they announced it when they did, you know, Gunn and Safran should have kept their mouths shut and took a back seat, worked on their projects and just allowed these movies to be released quietly. But they didn't do that. They made the situation worse, and Gunn's ego was in overdrive. He couldn't help himself. He had to tell us who's in charge by removing Henry Cavill because he's the big I am. How has that worked out for you, James? You removed the most popular Superman since Christopher Reeve. How has that worked out for you? Now you're sending copy and pasted begging letters for influencers and actors to speak on your behalf because you've already failed, James, before you've started. Lots of articles blaming him for the failure of The Flash. But it's not directly his fault. He hasn't helped the situation. There's no question about that. And right now, his legacy and his DC universe is in doubt already because Warner Brothers Discovery are stripping their assets. They're in such trouble. It seems to me they were banking on The Flash to be, you know, the movie that gets them out of this fiscal crisis. And as soon as that movie was released and it was pretty obvious it wasn't going to make any money, they started stripping assets. TCM, this $500 million deal. So it's all a bit of a mess for Warner Brothers Discovery. And as I keep on saying, they're weeks and days away from going into receivership. I don't know what's going to happen to this great old studio, but it's been run into the ground for many, many years, even before David Zaslav and Gunn got their hands on it. So you can't directly blame them for everything. But here's the truth. And this is something else even people didn't like the Flash movie won't admit. There is a mass boycott of DC films going on right now. As we already know, nobody boycotted the Batman, nobody boycotted Joker, because those directors are not toxic towards Zack Snyder or stuff that people like. But maybe the majority of DC fans do like the Snyderverse. I've already told you the box offices for the Snyder stuff, prior to the other people coming in reactively and trying to change what Snyder did. The Snyderverse was on a steady road. Maybe it wasn't on the triumphant road from day one, but it was taking good steps, 650 to BVS 850 to nearly 800 with Suicide Squad, 800 with Wonder Woman. That franchise was taking steady steps. Yes, the critics hated Man of Steel. They hated BVS even more. But they're not important if there's steady upward spiral of box office. They just had to hold their nerve, and they didn't. And now we are where we are. But make no mistake, these box offices tell me, if you compare the Snyderverse box office to the rest of the box offices, that the majority of DC fans are also Snyderverse stans as well. At the very least, they preferred the Snyder movies to the barrel of lame, low-budgeted shit they're getting now. And make no mistake, I gave you a review of the Flash movie and told you I liked certain elements of it. Ezra Miller's performance. I know a lot of people are not, think that Ezra Miller was bad in this movie and Ezra Miller was the reason this movie failed. Maybe it was. I don't think that completely, but I think, when you add the dots together and you see all these movies fail, then you see the box offices for the Snyderverse, and you see when it all started to go wrong from Justice League, and afterwards you can see a pattern forming. Only Aquaman made huge box offices. So it was Justice League, Aquaman, then the Hamadaverse. Now, Aquaman does have Walter Hamada's name on it, but something tells me he came in the middle of the Aquaman process, not at the beginning. So after Aquaman, we've had box offices from 200 to nearly 400 million. That tells you a story. That tells you their desperation. But if James Gunn has got hold of something so valuable and precious, if his DC universe is going to be so good, does it matter what we think right now? Does it matter what Snyderverse fans say on the internet? If you're confident, James, in your own ability, does it really matter? Why are you sending begging letters to DB Woodside and a comic book writer? And God knows who else they're going to get to speak on their behalf. Are we going to hear from Tom Cruise again like we did about The Flash? James Gunn is the best filmmaker ever. Let him make his universe. Is it going to be Stephen King all over again? Well, we know that nobody believed Tom Cruise and nobody believed Stephen King about the Flash movie. They didn't bring anyone to movie theatres. The Flash movie may not even make 300 million. May not. In its total global box office. Disastrous, everyone. This movie has cost them more than it's made them. And the whole world of, box office analysis are absolutely shocked about this result. Am I shocked? I am, and I'm not. I think the Flash movie deserves to be in this trouble because it's been toxic from day one, as I discussed in yesterday's video. So, as I keep on saying, karma is a bitch, but what next? Because they've tried every tactic under the sun. Maybe, James Gunn, you should come out publicly and apologise for lying about the quality of the Flash movie. And your boss, David Zaslav, should as well. But you're not going to do that. You lied about the quality of the Flash movie. You went onto Twitter and said you and Ben Affleck were discussing Ben directing a movie. He came out, not to you, but he came out to the Hollywood Reporter saying he wouldn't direct a DCU movie if his life depended on it. In a roundabout way. That's not very good, is it, James? 1 minute you're saying you're talking to Ben about making a movie, then a few days later, a few weeks later, he's on THR saying he wouldn't touch your movies with a barge pole. And we know why. Because you want to control the narrative of all those movies, like Kevin Feige does with the MCU. Look how that ended up. So I don't want you to misunderstand anything here. That tweet from Woodside mentions the Snyderverse fans straight away, because we're living in their heads rent-free. And I do class myself as a Snyderverse fan because I admire Zack's DC movies, but I'm also an all-round DC fan. So I want the best for this content. And I don't know what's best for DC anymore. DC is now in shackles. Why is it in shackles? It's in a consumer shackle. Because you're in this situation where, you know, the fandom split. Some people, the real DC fans, want this. They want bright and colourful cookie cutter movies. And you've got the Snyderverse stands who want Snyder to finish his arc. You could actually get the best of both worlds. But, and you know, I was going to say, but is it what WB and Gunn want? Well, they're at the stage where they really don't have a choice anymore. They're selling their soul to each devil. So, because they're asset stripping anyway, it is plausible that they may allow Netflix to allow Snyder to finish off his arc. It may be a situation where they ask Zack to return to the studio. But would Zack want to work with them again? They're not exactly trustworthy. Do they have the money to spend on Snyderverse content? Now, I'm not saying restoring the Snyderverse is realistic at this stage, but they're a very desperate company. And I told you at the beginning of the video, look out for the reaction to the Flash movie failing. Right now, it's begging letters to the fans. Give James Gunn a chance. As I say, if he makes a great Superman movie, I'll give him the credit he deserves. If he doesn't, I won't. That's where I stand. But it doesn't mean I trust James Gunn. It doesn't mean I'm going to forget the way he's conducted himself, how he lied about the quality of the Flash movie. He tried to influence his way into a successful film that had nothing to do with him. James Gunn shouldn't have been involved in the releases of these final 4 DC movies. And the fact that he has been involved so deeply tells you how bad this situation is. James Gunn went from a highly respected writer-director to someone who became a CEO of a company and basically took his 30 pieces of silver. Because it's not just about being a director for James Gunn anymore. He's going to spout the shit that Saslav wants him to, because he's so desperate to run DC. And he will do anything to make that a reality. It is a reality now, and he lied about the quality of the Flash movie to keep that reality, to keep his job as co-head of DC Studios. We already know he doesn't really want to make a Superman movie. They gave him that choice when he came in. He decided to do the Suicide Squad. So what you're seeing here is a lot of holes. Basically, everything the Snyderverse fans are saying is actually true. What doesn't help James Gunn, the one DC movie he has made, flopped and flopped hard. So that doesn't help his case for people to trust him. So what could help Warner Brothers Discovery right now is a successful Blue Beetle movie. What are the odds on that? I don't know. You would look at the other DC movies since Aquaman and say, this movie doesn't have much chance of succeeding. But there is a little 10%. Maybe this film is a good movie. Now, we heard that the test screenings went well. But we heard the Flash movie test screenings went well. I went to an early one. But there was positive word of mouth for the Flash test screenings. So the Blue Beetle test screenings being positive doesn't tell me anything one way or the other, because WB keep on leaking lies and propaganda. So you can't trust a word you hear anymore. from them because all they're doing, they're just desperate to make money from these movies. And their tactics are not working. Every time they speak, every time they do something, they make the situation worse and worse and worse. So if the Blue Beetle movie is successful, then maybe they can swim out of this situation. If it's a failure, it cements them in trouble. Will they wait until the Blue Beetle movie is released to see its box office to see what they do next? I would think yes, but who knows? And what about Henry Cavill? The real reason, one of the major real reasons that the Flash movie failed. They didn't want to use him anymore, but never told us for years whether he was Superman or not. There was rumours that he wasn't. Then Abby and DeLuca brought him back. James Gunn removed him. What happens next? Are they really going to be stupid enough not to take this opportunity? Because there is still an opportunity to bring Henry Cavill back as Superman and calm down a highly inflamed situation. Or are they going to be stubborn and insist in casting their own Superman? Well, according to them, there's been screen tests to play Superman. They've been screen testing actors to play Superman. I'm not sure or even convinced that any of that audition process or the screen test really happened. I think it was just bullshit distractions from the Flash box office bomb. But what do I know? That's a theory. I have a lot of theories. I apologize if you don't like that. But there is an opportunity here, because the biggest damage that was done to James Gunn's reputation since he's been co-CEO of DC Studios is the removal of Henry Cavill. So if you want to make a reactive decision to the Flash movie bombing and failing, bring back Henry Cavill. It's as simple as that. Bring back Cavill and a lot of this goes away. But you see, they don't want to be held to ransom by their customers. Let me tell you a little secret. Every customer in every consumer-based industry is holding the retailer, the companies, to ransom. We are in charge. If we don't spend our money, you're in trouble. The audience isn't spending its money on DC movies. You are in trouble. You need to do something. And the only thing you can do right now, apart from sell out and allow Snyder to make his movies on Netflix, is to bring Henry Cavill back. His post-credit scene on Black Adam was very exciting. The man looked in great shape. He's only 40. He's not 640. He's not 540. He's 40. He looks great. The whole world wants him to get his Man of Steel sequel. At least allow him to make one more Superman movie. Allow him to make that Man of Steel sequel. Announce it as his last appearance as Superman. Make it a big thing. This is the way. This is the only way, James Gunn, that you can break free from the situation you've created for yourself. I didn't create it. The Snyder fans didn't create it. You created it. You created it by coming in too early when there was 4 movies from a previous leadership to be released and you couldn't shut your big mouth. And you told the world too early that Henry Cavill wasn't going to be Superman. To be fair to James Gunn, that was being leaked out, so he had to say it. It wasn't kept a secret, but apparently he's good at keeping secrets. Well, he's not that good at keeping secrets. There's been so many leaks since he's taken over. So the whole thing has been a PR disaster since James Gunn has come in. He's not winning the hearts and minds of the important fans because shills are shills. They will watch anything you want them to watch. But the heart of the DC fandom are no longer going to cinemas to support DC movies. Nobody is required to support a DC movie unless it's very, very good. When it's a film like The Flash and it lacks the quality, No one has the divine right to get people's hard-working money. So that's the situation today. The situation continues to be problematic and inflammatory for DC Studios and Warner Brothers Discovery. What will they do next? I know what I would do next. Bring back Henry Cavill as Superman.